Okay, since the last time, I have put a coat of surface primer on these. To be precise, a polyurethane surface primer by Vallejo, a gloss black. It could have gone on a bit smoother in places, but I'm not too worried about it because in this case, most of the struts will be inside the airframe. And in this case, here it's not too bad on these. So what I'm going to do now is I will coat them with Alclad duraluminium. I find it easier to work with than the Vallejo metals, which are very good, but they I've not gotten quite used to them yet. They're a bit they tend to bead a lot on me. I think it's an air pressure issue, but they do have a very good range, and they're acrylics, so they're a bit more friendly, especially if you're going to be working in a small closed environment. But seeing as I've got myself a nifty little spray booth, I can pick and choose which ones I want. I find the Alclad to be a little bit more hardy, a little bit more robust when it comes to handling and weathering parts, where the Vallejos tend to be a little bit easier to rub off the surface. Anyway, I'm going to now airbrush them with duraluminium. It's not exactly a very interesting process because at this point there's not much to see really. There's no interesting things happening with paint gradients and special effects like fading and whatnot, because that just doesn't happen on these struts. The interesting stuff happens when you start adding oil streaks, oil staining, and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'll start now. Hopefully, you'll still be able to hear me over the compressor and the fan of the spray booth. Alclad likes thin, light coats and light passes. Dries really quickly, which is nice. It means you can work fairly quickly, which is something I'm used to doing, having worked deadlines with prop fabrication. We need this thing out and set tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Yeah, but it's 7 a.m. now. It's 7 p.m. in the evening. Yeah, get on it. We used to get a lot of students from the local art college who would, if they lasted 2 weeks, we'd keep them. But they'd be in college and they'd get tasks which we'd give them as well. But the difference being is in art college you get 3 to 6 months and then extensions and whatnot. With us it's, yeah, that thing, can you do this? Yeah, no, sure, we did that in college. Great. We need it on Tuesday. But it's Friday. I know. But I had plans this weekend. Not anymore. So that was a bit of a nice wake-up call for a lot of them. It's not fun, but they very quickly just found out there was very little glamour in prop fabrication. Now, arguably, this might be a little bit on the dark side. what I could do is give it a bit of an overspray with a lighter shade. Just seeing what I've got next to me. I might give it a quick dust with airframe aluminium, just to brighten it up a smidge. Turn that off for a second. Nobody needs to hear that all the time. There we go, airframe aluminium. This is a really, really, really shiny one. Get rid of the excess. Waste not, want not. Okay. I'm not going to go too mad with this. I just want a slight dust coat. There we go. That's just to brighten up just a little bit. I doubt you even see it, but I know it's there, and you know it's there. Our little secret. Now, because Alclad is a lacquer, it's very important that you prime this stuff, because if you don't, it can attack the plastic and craze it. And you get these little hairline cracks and gritty textures to the plastic, and it just ruins what could be a really nice finish. There. I think that'll do. Excellent. Now, obviously, we have a tyre right here, so I'll either look at hand brushing that, or airbrushing and masking it. I'll have a think about that. But we also have that strut there, the oleo or the piston from the undercarriage strut. The ones in here are fully compressed and almost invisible, so I'm not going to worry about those. But what I will do is, with that one, I'll give it a coat of Molotov liquid chrome, which is really, really nice. It gives you a almost 100% chrome finish, and it'll paint onto anything. Oh, look, ejector pin mark. Huh. So, plural. There's one right there as well. See, yeah. Should have spotted that one earlier. No, I'm not going to do too much about it. Not now. I mean, repainting the whole thing, I really can't be bothered. So I will now, off camera, paint the tyre, because my phone needs to charge a bit, and then get back to this in a moment. Actually, before I do that, I will give this a coat of aqua gloss to seal the metals. That'll also help with adding the wash. And this should already be dry enough to go over this thing. Lacquers are pretty quick. Don't need too much. It really is just to seal in the paint that's already on there. And aqua gloss is a really nice clear. There are very few that work as well for me personally. what this will help do is I'll be using enamel washes and the odd acrylic, but mostly enamel, using the MIG ammo line. And seeing they're enamel, there's less chance of it then attacking the lacquer underneath. Because obviously aqua gloss, aqua acrylic. Again, I meant to do this earlier today, but or over this weekend, but I wasn't feeling well yesterday. Just woke up hungover despite not having drunk anything. Just run down a bit, I think. Getting old. Cool. Right, that should do it. I will let this dry, then paint the tyre and start the weathering on these things, and then I'll do the gear doors at a later stage, maybe off camera as well, because that's a separate part that will have to affix to these when they're done. So yeah, I'll be right back. Well, the painting of that went quicker than I anticipated. So what I'm going to do now is I will mask it so I can airbrush liquid chrome onto the strut. Now, liquid chrome, you can airbrush it neat, but I find that if you cut it with Mr. Color thinners at about like a 50-50 ratio, it works really, really well, and it dries quicker and it dries harder as well, because otherwise it takes forever to dry. Now I'm looking for my scalpel. I have a 1-year-old child. I should really, really pay attention to where I put my scalpels. It's around here somewhere. Yeah, anyway, I have nails we'll use. So yeah, I'll attempt to mask this in the meantime, and hopefully I'll be able to airbrush it and not get it on literally everything, because it sprays quite thin as well. So you can use a very low air pressure, but it really is worth it. It's highly, highly shiny. I've used it before when I've been restoring Transformer toys, because they are like vintage toys, so their chrome has obviously been wrecked from years of playing. So a coat of the liquid chrome really helps. In fact, I might have an example within reach. As I say this now, oh, here we go. So many Transformers here, it's not even funny. Now, I think this is the original. Yeah, this is an original. And then here's one I restored. There is a bit of a difference you can see a difference, but it's just a little bit duller. I didn't really prep the surface all that well on this guy at all. But if you consider they looked like that before, with all the yellow plastic showing through underneath, it is quite a difference. I've also got another one around here somewhere. That'll be this guy. And I repainted the guy's arms with the chrome. And look at that shine. That really is quite nice, and the legs as well, for that matter. There's actually quite a lot on here that I repainted with the Molotov liquid chrome. Obviously, you can use Alclad chrome as well. That's also very, very good. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I shall be using Molotov. And let me continue masking this off screen so it doesn't take forever, because this is quite tedious to watch, no doubt. So yes, I will be back in the spray booth in a moment. Right. I'll be using the liquid chrome now and cutting it with the Mr. Colour. You notice I'm wearing gloves now because there's not so much this, but this is quite nasty stuff, which you might notice when I pour it into the plastic cup there. It tends to dissolve it, which is not good. So you can see on here how shiny that is. Now, because it cuts so nicely with the Mr. Colour thinners, a little goes a very long way. I'm sure one of these is a little bit expensive on, say, Amazon, but so it goes a very long way, especially if you thin it. I'm just thinning it sort of more or less to eye here. There's no really hard and fast rule. There we go. Might need a little bit more, but we shall see. We shall see. When you pour it, it looks like mercury. Lower the pressure. Let's see, go to test. And that's mostly just airbrush cleaner coming out at the moment. There we go. Beading a little bit. Might be because yeah, it's probably too thin. Let's put a little bit there. Go back in there. This is not an exact science. Just a little bit more. So it might be a bit too watery. That's better. Look at that. It's like liquid metal. And this is one ruined brush. It's one thing I'm good at. It's ruining brushes. That looks like. Yeah, that'll do. Here's to not coating the entire thing that I've just painted in this stuff. Yeah. It might not be so easy to see because everything's burning out on this big overlight top light I have here, but it really is really shiny. I'm going to leave it at that. The way I see it is, if you start wondering, should I add more? That's the point that you should immediately stop. So yeah, let's see what that looks like. Should give us a really nice contrast between the two metal types that are in there. Should we just take these gloves off? Manipulating sticky tape with gloves is a really hard thing to do. I found out the other day trying to maneuver some double-sided sticky tape wearing latex gloves. It just was an absolute comedy. I'll grab some tweezers just to help. So yeah, this liquid chrome stuff is really nice. I've been seeing it on the internet for a while. People using it. I didn't know too much about it. Just went ahead and got. Actually, I didn't get some. I convinced work to get some first. Wow, look at that. Again, you can't really see it so much, but you can really tell it makes a huge difference. And it's really quick and easy to apply, as long as you get the ratio right. I had it too water or too thin to start with, which meant it was just too watery and went on and started to bead. But chucking out half of it and adding more of the chrome made a big difference. Now again, because it's aluminium and chrome, it's hard to see, but up close, you can really get you can really see the difference in the metals. It's very satisfying. No one shall be seated for the masking tape removal. Yeah, so this is boring. Oh, good. I just touched it, like an idiot that I am. See that nice little mark there? But fear not. This stuff works really well with leveling thinners, which I have here somewhere. Anyway, the basic gist is you just hit it with this stuff again, and it reactivates. So I'll gently remask this. See, I'm far from perfect. I don't have the patience half the time. I'm a very sloppy builder. Well, that was a success. And I'm not being sarcastic here, it actually really worked quite nicely. You can still see a scuff on there, but it's a lot less than it was. It's not perfect, but it's close enough for now. seeing as A, it'll be in the aircraft, you'll only sort of see the back of it, and B, it's not uncommon for these things to have scuffs, and C, I will be weathering this thing anyway. But no, can you see? Yeah, you can see that it comes out really nicely. Get that beautiful chrome finish on it, which is really nice. And there's the tyre, hand painted. Got some plans for that, girly girl, which will be to give it a dust coat, a dust wash. And then when that's dried out, I will take some smoke pigment and then rub that on the treads, and that'll hopefully give it a nice worn rubber look. Now you may have noticed that I didn't paint it flat black, because tyres are not flat black. They're a sort of dark grey, dark brown, browny grey, depending on how old they are. I also don't like using flat black because it doesn't scale well, and it also doesn't really allow for washes. You can put a black finish in there, flat black, in say a cockpit, but then you're sort of struggling to get some of those shadows in there with a black wash, which I would normally do with a Citadel or an enamel or an oil wash. So yeah, it doesn't show up, and it'll darken anyway when you put the wash on top of it. So that's why I use black grey, which is like an anthracite grey instead, which works a lot nicer for me. It scales nicer as well. So I'm going to let this sit for a bit and cure, and move over to the desk and start putting washes on these. I just off camera painted the insides of the gear bay doors. That will be fixed to the front of these guys. They will have to be weathered separately because, well, once they're on, I can't get to the insides of them. So I'm going to leave these aside so they can dry. I'll probably do this tomorrow evening, give them 24 hours to cure properly. I painted them with Mr. Hobby interior green acrylic, thinned with Tamiya X20A acrylic thinners. They're pretty much the same types of paint. I believe they even come from the same factory. That's what I was told at some point. It may all be lies, who knows. But yeah, that's what I painted those with. That's what we're going to be painting all the interiors with. The gear bay, the interior gear doors, the gear bays, the interior of the cockpit, the interior of the engine cowling. Now, there's some debate as to whether or not the interiors of these things were salmon pink or green, but seeing as I don't have one parked on the driveway, I'm going to stick with the interior green, because I found a lot of reference where it's also green as opposed to salmon pink. I believe the earlier aircraft was salmon pink. I have no idea. I'm not that big of a Corsair aficionado. I'm pretty sure there's someone out there who will gladly tell me I'm wrong. But as I said, as I don't have one parked on the driveway, I have no way of telling what is what. And I really just want things to move along before things get bogged down. I also painted the connecting rods with some MiG ammo polished metal, which is a close match to what's on the struts already. When they're done, or when it's dry, I will use, where is it? I should really be tidier. A clay wash by Flooring Models, this one, Floory dark dirt. So I find this is a nice one for undercarriage bays. I've used it previously on this guy. It's not the best, but then again, I'm not. Yeah, no, let's not talk about this. Less said about that, the better. Anyway, I tend to use that in bays because it's very nice for simulating exactly what it is. It's dirt, it's grime, it's clay, and then I augment that with oil washes and acrylic washes to give it that nice grimy used look. Because aircraft do tend to kick a lot of crud into their bays. Obviously, they're cleaned from time to time. I mean, any good crew chief worth his salt would be mortified to have an aircraft looking that bad. Because these are vital components of the aircraft, and you want to make sure that those are operating properly. And you can't inspect a part or a component of the aircraft properly if it's covered in crud. The exterior paint is another story, especially with combat aircraft. They can get badly attacked by the elements. But yeah, anyway, let's start getting creative with these. Now, there still needs to be, as I said, the gear bays as well. The doors need to go on, but also the brake lines. But they have to go on after they go on. And there's also these parts here, which, according to a beautiful photo I just found, are springs. Which go from, if I'm not mistaken, this point to that point, between there. Being springs, they'll be oily and dirty and steel coloured, so I'll do those sort of separately as well. And then once they're all added on together, I'll add a bit of a pin wash here and there to help blend it all together. Notice that there's these oleo struts in there as well. So what I'll do with that is I will quickly bring in some of the chrome and just brush it on. Look at how shiny that is. It's crazy. And this is still the same mixture I airbrushed a moment ago. This is a tricky area to airbrush, so I'm just brush painting it on. Makes life easier. You can't really see much of a difference. But it's there. Get a nice little glint off of it. Oh yeah. You can see it. Yeah, it's not cheap, but it really works nicely. Sent some to a friend of mine down in Cape Town as a present. He does a lot of custom cars. I'll put a link to his Facebook page in the description, and you should really check it out. It's got some really nice stuff. At the moment, he's weathering a Fairy Gannet that he won at a competition. Weirdly, he does a lot of car modelling, so hence he was thrilled to get the chrome. He does a lot of car modelling, which for some reason doesn't get as much recognition as it should, because there's some really talented guys out there, and it's all just overlooked at competitions because people tend to go and look at the really filthy tanks and the gnarly looking aircraft, and there's a couple of subjects that just really don't get the recognition they deserve. cars, civil aviation, aircraft. They're just not as exciting, I suppose, which is a shame. It sort of deters people from doing them, because you want to show up to a competition or to an IPMS event and go, look at this, and people just go, that's nice and shiny, and then move on to the next thing. But they could have put hours and hours and hours of work into them, and they can get dismissed. People can be very dismissive of them. It's not really fair. Again, I might be wrong here. But this is coming from him. This is from his local IPMS, and having been member of the same IPMS, I can see why they're that specific group. There's nothing wrong with it, but they're very focused on a small, very small subject, very narrow subject, which is a bit of a shame, a bit myopic. But nice guys, but they don't really take to cars. Anyway, that aside, I'm gonna start with some deep brown panel line wash in areas. I tend to make this up as I go along half the time, because I've never really done the same thing twice to aircraft. Anyway, I like these MiG products. I followed MiG throughout his endeavours for quite a while now. I've still got some original MiG pigments from back in the day that I bought, must have been 10, 12 years ago now. Long time ago. But yeah, he's been through various companies. He's had various issues with partners and all that. A lot of stuff I haven't really bothered myself with. He's a solid guy, nice guy, knows what he's doing. He's a really talented modeler, and he knows his products. And this is one of them, the panel line washers, which I find aren't just for panel lines, obviously. And here I'm using it as a little wash to go into the corners of all these undercarriage struts. Again, I'm not using black because it's just too stark. Black tends to be pretty overpowering, unless you're looking at a very disgustingly oily, dirty area. Then black comes in handy. But otherwise, it's a bit overpowering. So yeah, I'm just tapping it onto these areas here. There's a bit of a detail, a bit of a recess, and then once this is on, I'll use different washes to simulate areas that are a bit more oily, a bit more grimy, which is usually in the in and around these knuckles where there's grease, and grease, as you know, attracts grime or dirt, dust. It just kind of clags to it. I'm quite happy I'm getting this out of the way first. Again, as I said the other day, it can be very tedious. This way, you can do it when you've still got enthusiasm for the subject. Either that, or at a certain point you'll end up with boxes and boxes and boxes full of undercarriage and nothing else. It's yeah, it's not too bad. Now, the nice thing about these enamel washes is that you can take some enamel thinners and a moist brush or a cotton bud, just wash them back. Just blend them. Take the edge off in cases. Now, so the deeper you go to the top, the more dirt, and especially these areas in here where it's harder to reach. In reality, you'll get more grime collecting. And in the corners of those scissors. Yes. Let that dry for a moment. And do the same with this guy. Close this and give it a shake. Here we go. I'll put some close-up pictures of what's happening here on Facebook or Instagram even, just so you can see what's going on, what the effect is, because you can't really make it out in there. And it's looking all right from here, but we are talking about a teeny tiny little area here. Let it pool in those areas, which is what you use the gloss coat for. The gloss coat sort of breaks the surface tension of the wash, which means it'll help pull it into corners using capillary action. That'll help simulate how dirt will stick in those deep recesses that are hard to get to. There we go. Let that sit for a bit. That's probably a bad idea. Cool. I may or may not revisit that one, or that particular wash. See how we go. For now, let's clean this fella. To do this, I use the Mr. Hobby Mr. Tool Cleaner. But decanted into a jar and then sealed, because it is quite stinky. So let's go back to these guys. Take one of these. Bit of Humbrol enamel thinners. It seems to be odorless, so I've got a Q-tip in my mouth, just so. There we go. Actually, I might not use this. I might go back to said brush. Just give it Just sort of help wipe some of this away from these areas. Blend it a bit more. Yeah, it's not too bad. I'm just checking under this light over here, just off camera. Nice thing about enamels, as opposed to acrylics like the Citadel washes, is that you can use some enamel thinners to just help wake it up a bit and shunt it around. Because once the acrylics are down, that's it, they're done, they're not going anywhere. But with this you can sort of gently persuade it to move around again. And less is more. There's a little bit of, yeah, I'll leave that. There we go. It's subtle for now, but as I said, I'm not quite done with these. I am now going to go to put this away. See, that's, yeah, it's not good. These are little polystyrene shot glasses, and they don't tend to play well with half the materials I use, but they're disposable, so I should probably use stuff that isn't disposable and clean it properly, seeing as we are in a bit of a miserable place with the planet at the moment. Anyway, so that's some Agrax Earthshade, which is by Citadel. It's an acrylic wash. I use that in just to daub on some of these places here. You can see it's kind of beading a bit, probably because of the thinners. Mash it into some of these corners here. Again, a little bit of this goes a very long way. Normally you'd use it to coat miniatures and then give them a dry brush afterwards. Not so much with me. I just tend to use it as little spot washes, or pin washes, whatever you like, to dirty things up, because it gives a nice sort of dirty, oily colour. You can see some of this because it's very dark on camera. So I'll put the close-ups online later for everyone to see. And that's those. I'm not going to go too mad with this stuff as well. Just put a little daub there, a little bit there. There you go. And then with that, I'll take some of the Nuln oil. It's a nice sort of dark browny blacky colour. I think these are ink based, and just put them on these joints here. Just give you an idea of grease collecting dirt. I want to Shatner at that one. To simulate grease collecting dirt. Spark. Spark. Anyway. Yeah, it's dirty, but not. You know what I mean? It's relatively relatively cleanish. Again, these are vital aircraft systems, so they would have been kept fairly tidy-ish. Don't want to go too mad yet. There we go. Again, once you start wondering, should I add more? Immediately stop. These look all right like that. Little daub in here. The base of the piston, because pistons tend to run quite moist, especially if they're used a lot in gritty environments. They can end up leaking along the seals. Apparently the Coral Sea, or the Pacific, on the Coral Islands, it was very, very abrasive. So I can imagine that any coral dust kicked up and into the gear bays and would settle on these pistons, and then end up chewing up the oil seals around the piston. That's not too bad. I might just add a little bit of this stuff on these corners here. Just one here, a bit there, a bit over here, bit of shadow, bit of shade, again around the base there. Just helps tie things together. Now, I will also do the tyre with black, so you can get a bit of depth with the tread for now. As I said earlier, we're going to add a dusty wash to this as well, to bring out the rubber by using a black pigment powder, normally used for smoke. You can use it for gun smoke or gun port smoke, but it's a bit tricky to work with. Put a little bit more in down in the. Actually, no. I'll leave the wheel as is. There you go. You can see it's sort of again beading because of the enamel and the thinners on there, but that's fine. Groovy. Yeah, there's some stuff that I might just tidy up with the enamel thinners again. It's a bit murky over here. Here. I want to get rid of this. There we go. Some overspill here. Bring that to the top. Same here. Blend that up. Especially this little bit there. That as well. Oop. Very grimy there now. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. There we go. Gonna keep that piston a bit grotty, and here as well. This would have been at a pretty hard to reach part of the aircraft. Inside the wheel well, the tail wheel well, which is quite narrow. So I'm going to leave that as is as well. And yeah, I'm going to have to leave this to dry and probably come back to it tomorrow, let it sit overnight, think about what it's done. And I think tomorrow, when this is all cured and dried, I will work on the tail wheel. I'll work on the bay doors and bring it all together. And then hopefully this time tomorrow we will have some undercarriage doors. I mean, some main gears and tail gears and undercarriage in general. Right, so one more look. Are we happy with this? I think so. Let's give that a bit of a nudge. Yeah, we're all right. Let's see, can we see any of this? It's hard to tell. It is hard to tell because you've got all these metallic colours, terrible lighting. Trust me, it'll all come out on camera. So yeah, I'll take some stills, add these to the end of the video, and yeah, you can see what I've been doing with the washes. Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much.